Hi there, I'm Sandy Allnock with another episode of Create in Color here on the MFT channel. And this month I'm going to be using the kitties and the puppies. These are so cute. I love doing cats and dogs because I have a couple of each at my house. And here's how I did my stamping. I just wanted to show you the finished results, finished stills of them. I stamped first the dog, and then you can see I added a mask on top of the dog. I only cut that left side of him because I didn't need to cut out the right side. And then I stamped my little kitty and added the kitty on top, so when I remove the mask, it looks like the kitty's behind. And when you do that, when you're stamping multiple images, if you can connect them in some way like that, it just makes them feel like they're related to each other rather than just having two sitting separate from each other. And that's often helpful. Now I'm going to try, at least my first intent was to try to make these look like one of my kitties and one of my doggies. Doesn't end up that way in the long run, but I'm trying to color some areas that are white. And a lot of folks struggle with how you color something that's supposed to be white. You still need to give it some shading. So I'm giving it my darker color first. And in something white, yes, you can go into a C3, even a C4. I've gone way darker than that to add really dark shadows. But your whites will start to look white by contrast. So I'm blending in then with a lighter gray. Now you might want to go also with a C0 or 00 because those are even lighter. And if you're blending all the way into white, for some folks, if you're not really good at flicking and letting that marker lift up off the paper, it can be a little easier to just use a lighter color or use some colorless blender at the very end to soften out those edges. So I've got my whites kind of generally colored in here, and then I wanted to start adding my darks. Whenever I color something that's really dark, I start with a mid-tone. Because if you start with a really light color, you're going to end up looking like you have really light gray highlights on something, and unless it's a shiny object, that doesn't really make sense on something like a soft puppy dog. Now my dog has black ears and then 2 black spots over her eyes. And as I started doing this, I was realizing, well, it's not going to look much like her. So I guess I'm going to do a different kind of dog and give them different spots and that sort of thing. But I'm still going to aim to make the kitty look like my little guy Punch. So Punch has dark ears, and I'll give him some dark ears. And then he has some spots on him. So the dog, I thought, well, let me add some other spots to him and just make him a different kind of spotted dog. And I'm coloring these with this medium tone color, and I'll add some darks to it, even darker colors, in order to add some dimension. And there's my kitty's distinctive eye patch over one of his eyes. He's just so adorable. He's beautiful, beautiful kitty. And then I thought I'd add a little bit of color onto the cat as well, onto his body. And I'm coloring this, by the way, on some MFT smooth white cardstock, which works just great for Copic markers. And they're stamped with some of MFT's licorice hybrid ink that works great with Copics. So now I'm adding a darker color. I picked a C9, could have gone with a C10 or a black, but that scares people, so I went with something a little bit lighter. You can see there's definitely a difference between the dark and the light, but I really am only going to need 2 shades when I get into colors that are this dark. And I really liked the contrast, so I started adding more. Now around this eyeball here, if I started coloring that C9 all the way around, I'd end up with the eyeball just disappearing. And you could go back in with a black pen and lighten it up, but I'm just going to leave a little bit of a halo around that kitty's eye so it still shows up. Leave a little highlight on the nose and stuff so it'll have a little shine on it. And then I'm going to go back in with my C6 again and just kind of color right over top of things and start to blend some of that color out. And after all of this was when I kind of decided that rather than doing those spots, I wanted to make a black dog with a little white tuft on his belly, because there is a little dog that I meet at the park on a regular basis, or shall I say my dogs meet at the park on a regular basis, who's black and has this adorable little white tuft right under his chin, and he's really cute. So I thought I'll make it look like him. What the heck? That's the nice thing about Copics, is you can change your mind as you go. Change colors, color right over top of things, that sort of stuff, and adapt your plan as you're doing your coloring. Copic markers, in some people's mind, you have to keep working on it while it's wet. And I used to think that, but I have not subscribed to that for a while because I set something down and I come back to it, and it's really easy to just re-wet. Just go over something with another layer of color and it will melt out that color again so that you can start doing more blending. Next, I grabbed my C3 marker and just started working on some of those white areas of the bodies. Remember how dark they looked before? Once you get the contrast of the rest of the color on there, it almost looks like it disappears. So I'm adding a little bit more. And then I wanted to work on the head a little bit. Wanted to smooth it out, but also adding so much of the C6, it was making the head look like it was all the same thing, the hair tuft and the nose and everything. So I used my C3 as a colorless blender to remove some color. Look at that. Look how bright it makes it. And that's with a C3, not a colorless blender, because I'm adding a little bit of color and not just totally colorless blender. And then I went over it with the C6 and it smoothed it right out. So sometimes you can lighten areas by using a lighter shade of the color that's already there. So a couple little finishing touches. I'm going to add a little color, a little pop for the collar. And then use my W markers. You can see really clearly the difference. It's a much browner type of gray. And that just creates a nice difference between the animals and the ground that they're sitting on. So that's all that's going to go on the front of the card. I'm going to keep that nice and simple, but I wanted to work on something fun for the inside. It's a great idea for kids' cards, which is to stamp something that they can color. Because we know how to mask. And once you know how to mask things, it gets a little addictive. So what I did was take still pictures as I was doing the masking so you could see some progress. First, I stamped the two little dogs, masked them out, added the little dog and the little bowl, added more kitty, added more puppies, and just kept going and building it up because I'm working from the front to the back. And that was not all done in one fell swoop, but that was the pictures that I took. Just building up more and more as it gets toward the top of the scene, and it just ends up this cacophony of crazy fun puppies. Imagine the look on a kid's face when they open a pack of pencils, fresh pencils, and your card so that they can do all that coloring themselves. So I hope you do something fun like this for a kid near you. Encourage them to do some art by giving them something to color. And I'll see you guys next month. Have a really great summer. Bye-bye.